4 decades, one fish has been recommended to newcomers more than any other. It's a fish that a lot of us started with. It's beautiful, active, famous for being laughably easy. Of course, I'm talking about the guppy. But their reign as the king of beginner fish may be over. That advice that was once bedrock of the hobby might be setting new fish keepers up for failure. The truth is, many modern guppies are a shadow of their former selves, and there are better fish out there that do the job for beginners. If you're new to the aquarium hobby, and someone, a friend, pet store employee, told you to start with guppies, I really need you to watch this first. I'm going to show you why fancy guppies that you find at most stores today might be a trap for hobbyists, and I'm going to introduce you to their hardier cousin that is a much more beginner-friendly fish on the market. Now, to understand what's gone wrong with guppies today, we have to look at what made them so famous in the first place. The original guppies and ones that have been common up and probably till the last 10 or so years was that they were an incredibly tough fish. They were the definition of hardy fish, forgiving to most common mistakes that we make. They were active, peaceful, they bred easily, it was a running joke, they bred like rabbits. This reputation for being nearly indestructible is what made them one of the #1 picks, if not the #1 pick, for beginners. But that popularity has become a double-edged sword. The demand for guppies exploded, and with it, the demand for wider color ranges, fancier tails, bigger fins, and this kicked off an era of the fancy guppy and the rise of huge industrial-scaled fish farms. That is where our story of trouble began. You'll notice I said most fish stores and not hobbyist bred fish, because there's a difference. Biggest issue is the rampant inbreeding of these fish, which goes well beyond the guppies, and that's a topic for another time. To get these stunning colors and fins, breeders have to be very selective with the fish they breed, with those traits that they want over and over again. While this does make for beautiful fish, it can really crush the genetic diversity within them. So generations of intensive inbreeding to get those selective traits have left many fancy guppies with weakened systems overall. Their immune systems are not as strong, which makes them more susceptible for some beginner mistakes and diseases that a hardier fish could shake off easier with simple water change. Experienced hobbyists will tell you that a lot of guppies sold in chain stores today are the product of this, leading to a revolving door of sick fish and frustrated fish owners. Now, that does not mean that all guppies are bad for you. If you can find someone that breeds them locally, their fish are normally hardier than pet stores. The problem really lies with the more mass-produced fish. Now, it's not just fish farms that are mass-producing this. There are people in the hobby that will mass-produce fish to sell because it's their business. But they have to go through the same process as these fish farms. So even if you know someone who breeds guppies, ask them how they breed them. Are they specifically breeding them where they just want specific types of color variations and fins? Or do they introduce some different genetics into their fish lines while they do this, and then go from there? To simplify the whole genetic issue here, if you have 2 fish and you're going for, say, the color orange, fish have children. If children raise up, you can say 90% of them are orange, and then you get 10% that may be purple. You remove those purple ones, you find the best orange ones out of your lot, and then you breed those. And you go through that again, and you're slowly pulling the non-desirable genes out of your fish, which is what causes the problems. Because the more you breed internally with the same type of fish over and over again, the genetics are too close and they get weaker. Same thing with dogs. If you get purebred dogs, they're more susceptible to diseases. The more mutt in your fish or dog, the more likely your fish is a hardier animal and will last longer for you. Now, this brings up, of course, diseases. Personally, I have found that modern fancy guppies are a magnet for things like ick or even fin rot, or just diseases that are brought on by stress or even slight dips in water quality, to where if they're not pristinely perfect or within specific parameters, they just fall apart. Especially in crowded farms, then they're shipped to fish stores and it's just a breeding disaster waiting to happen for bacteria. When they're shipped across the world or across country, that stresses them. They're then thrown into tanks, beginners bring them home, and the fish are often just a ticking time bomb of behavior problems, just waiting to go off in your tank. So as a beginner who's just learning about water quality or fish health, you're not going to be as equipped to fight this fight that you may have in your tank. Which leads to a heartbreaking common story of a new fish freaker doing everything right they can to get their tanks perfect the way they want them, They add their new guppies and they just watch them get sick and die. And usually if something goes wrong with our pets, we blame ourselves. So then you get these people into the hobby, they're now blaming themselves, and they think they failed when they brought these fish home. On top of that, these genetic weaknesses often lead to a shorter lifespan. While a more robust guppy can live 3+ years, a lot of these mass-produced strains are only living 1-2 years. In my experience, they're only lasting a month. Their bodies just aren't as resilient. Minor things that an older generation of fish keepers never had to worry about, like small swings in water parameters, can now be fatal to these more delicate guppies that we've bred. So if the fancy guppy's off the table for beginners, who should be taking their throne? Well, the answer is a close relative if you're looking for something that's filled with beautiful colors and also stays small. And that's the Endlers live bearer. For anyone starting out today, the Endler, in my opinion, is everything the guppy used to be. They're hardy, active, colorful, and genuinely easy to keep. They're also a little harder to find at popular fish stores. So you're not gonna be able to walk into your PetSmart and your Petco's and get these. These are gonna be something you have to go to like an actual fish store or a store that deals more in aquatics than the general store might have. But what makes them so much better? To me, it comes down to the genetics. Endlers are much closer to their wild ancestors. They haven't been subjected to the intense, targeted inbreeding that has weakened things like the fancy guppy. While different color strains of Endlers exist, they've held closer to their more natural genetic diversity and toughness, which translates to a more beginner resilient fish. Endlers have a strong immune system. They are far less prone to common diseases that will hit these more inbred fancy guppies. They handle stress in newer tanks better, and this means they're much more forgiving. They can tolerate wide ranges in parameters for water, pHs of 6.5 to 8.5. They can be kept in unheated tanks at room temperature, depending, of course, on what your room temperature is. If your room is 40 degrees, you might need a heater. But if your room is around, mid-low 70s, you're good for these without a heater. Well, you shouldn't be neglecting any fish at all. Endlers give a new hobbyist some breathing room without the constant crisis and panic. For a beginner, that forgiving nature is the most valuable trait any fish can have, making the learning curve fun instead of stressful. We want this hobby to be fun. We don't want people to be stressing out over their fish constantly. If you're finding this information helpful or maybe just a little bit surprising, please do me a favor and hit that like button. It does really help the channel grow and find more people and keep people in this hobby longer. And if you've had your own frustrating time with guppies or have fallen in love with Endlers like I have, please share your stories in the comments because it helps all of us learn more things. So let's do a more direct comparison to see why Endlers pull ahead for beginners. First, size. Endlers are smaller noticeably than fancy guppies. Male Endlers hit about an inch, while fancy guppy males get to about an inch and a half. Female Endlers top out about 1.8 inches, but female guppies can reach up to sizes of 2.5 inches. That smaller size also is a huge plus for beginners because it allows you to keep them in a group in a smaller tank. You can keep a pair of Endlers in a 10-gallon, which is a common starter size. Not saying you can't keep guppies in a 10-gallon, but having a slightly smaller fish gives you just that bit more wiggle room that we like to have when we're just starting out with a hobby. Next, the color. Now, you might think the fancy guppies wins this because of its massive variety and huge flowing tails. And it's true, some guppies are very breathtaking, but that beauty often comes with the cost of fragile genetics. Endlers have a different kind of beauty. Their colors are more metallic jewels of green and orange with some blacks and dark purples. It's a natural vibrancy that isn't tied to extreme fin shapes. They are absolutely stunning fish, and their constantly darting motion makes their colors flash all over your tank. The most crucial comparison is hardiness. And as we've already covered, this isn't really a fair fight because, again, many modern guppies are just so much more delicate and disease prone. Endlers are a tough, adaptable, and resilient fish, handling such a wide range of temperatures and water chemistries that it just makes it a safer bet for a beginner whose tank conditions might not be perfectly stable from day to day for any various reasons. And finally, breeding. Both are live bearers, so they breed incredibly easy. You'll wake up one day and you'll just see fry. However, Endlers tend to have a smaller brood of fry than guppies, so for a beginner, that could also be an advantage for you because you won't be overwhelming your filter and the ecosystem in your tank. A pair of guppies can just overrun your tank with babies overnight. The Endlers' more manageable breeding rate makes population control less of an emergency. When you look at them side by side, to me, the choice for beginners is pretty clear. While fancy guppies, colors, and fin shapes can be tempting, the Endler, to me, offers a much higher chance of success and enjoyment. Have I convinced you to try Endlers yet? Well, the good news is setting up a tank for them is easy. A 10-gallon aquarium is the perfect starter for a small group of these. You want to do a trio so it's less stress on the females. Make sure you have a lid because these guys can be jumpers. Try to seal any holes as best you can. For water, they aren't very picky. They're happy in a wide range of pH. My water is 6.0 and they are okay in my water and breed. A heater is definitely optional. It depends how cold your room gets. Me living in New England, I have heaters in all of my tanks because I don't even want my cold water fish to get too cold. I keep my Endlers around 72, 74, depending on what kind of tank they're in. Really, just be sure you're using a water conditioner. That's really the only thing you have to really specially do to your water. Filtration, you don't need anything crazy. A simple sponge filter or generic run-of-the-mill hang on the back. When it comes to food, Endlers eat pretty much anything that'll fit in their little tiny mouths. Personally, I would go with a high-quality food flake or high-quality micro pellets, something by Northfin or Hikari freeze-dried food would be good as well. For decor, plants. More live plants in your tank, the better. You can go super simple with these as well. Get yourself some Java moss, some guppy grass. You can do a bunch of Anubias if you want as well. That's also going to help keep your tank stable for them as well. It's going to give the fry some places to hide and the females a little more comfortability when they want to drop their fry too. Simple, low maintenance setup that again is perfect for anyone that's just starting their fish keeping journey, or if you're looking to set up a tank at your office or in your kid's bedroom. Now, while the aquarium hobby should be relaxing and rewarding, the last thing a newcomer needs is to be frustrating with the experience of a fish that is not suited for them. While they are beautiful fish, the fancy guppy is mass produced nowadays, and in my opinion, no longer that beginner fish it once used to be. There have been too many years of inbreeding and it just created a more fragile shell of what they used to be. And there needs to be more deliberacy done when taking care of them. Again, that's my opinion. The Endler Live Bear, however, is the total package for a beginner that wants an active fish, lots of color, and a hardy fish that's going to last a while in their tank and not be as susceptible to some beginner mistakes like forgetting to do a water change or possibly overfeeding. The guppy will always have a place in this hobby. They're not going anywhere. But if you're looking for a true active bulletproof fish that is also a live bearer and has a lot of nice color variations and stays small, the Endler for me is the new reigning champion on this front. If you want to learn more on guppies though, I will link a guppy playlist with some various care guides and things on them. If you did enjoy this, please make sure you do subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on any more helpful tips for you beginner keepers. And leave a like, share this out if you think it'll help a friend or you're just interested in spreading information on fish. And I will see you guys in the next one.